Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs.
Scaling a startup sounds like growth, but it's really having things constantly breaking around you. What worked at 10 people stops working at 40. Communication breaks, structure lacks, and as a founder, working harder doesn't fix it. You have to change how you operate entirely. In this episode, we speak to Gregory Inauen, co-founder and co-CEO of Grape, to unpack what that shift actually looks like. Why scaling is mostly an organizational problem, how hiring should be either a hell yes or a hell no, and why in some cases, positioning yourself as a startup can actually work against you. If you're building and looking to add scale, this is the part nobody really talks about.
I'm sitting here with Greg Inauen, founder and co-CEO of Grape, a Swiss digital employee insurance company combining insurance, software, and preventive health services. Greg, before Grape, you're already building in very different environments. That's also when we got to meet each other, back when you were in the ETH Entrepreneur Club, which was your first major venture at that time. Looking back to that time in your life, what kept you pulling toward company building and starting your own company?
Thanks for having me. Hey, Lars. Yeah, if you go all the way back, hindsight 2020, but it came very natural to me. Somehow I was just always gravitating towards entrepreneurship. I think now looking back, it's a bit clear that how I would call it, like startups, entrepreneurship, or tech startups. But actually, in where I grew up, in a small town in Appenzell, right, and around my family, a lot of people were entrepreneurial, but just very different, in a different context, right? More in SMEs, right? Like from my mom to my dad to my uncles to my grandparents. There we talk about like car dealerships or like beauty salons, or on the banking side, but small SME scale. And personally, already at a young age, I was always fascinated and interested in technology, from like getting my first computer to coding at a young age. And so it feels like everything led to this, because I was always interested in entrepreneurship. That's just kind of how I was, I think, wired or brought up. And then I had that interest in technology. And I think that also led me then to go to ETH, because ETH Zurich is the #1 technical university. But actually as well, when I was looking ETH up online, or when I was looking up startups back in the days online, ETH also showed up with their spin-offs. And that was always fascinating, like deep tech and what they built. And so I felt if I want to combine entrepreneurship, startups, and technology, that would be a good starting point.
That's very interesting. Yeah. So for you, it was clear from the beginning, when you already started your studies, that at one point you want to build a company? Or was it also an option for you to work in a corporate or to do something completely different in your career?
I think the corporate path was never an option. If you would have asked me, then maybe I could have not articulated it that way. But looking back, the first year I arrived at ETH, I signed up for the ETH Entrepreneur Club, right, and helped out with events. And I remember they had a rule that that you cannot join as first semester or in your first year. And I think the rule doesn't exist anymore. And I anyway just like helped out at events, and somehow they just let me in. But it just came natural to me. And then I also never attended any career fairs. I never wrote a CV, never sent it out, never really thought about internships. You also don't have a lot of time at ETH to think a lot about these things. It's quite tough, the studies, but still, like I actually it never really crossed my mind. I never thought about it. Yeah.
And like these early experiences that you had, right? Because you joined all these events. And I remember I saw you, even at the early days of Grape, I saw you at these events helping out. So you were a very well-known face in the Swiss startup community. And what I'm curious of is like, what did these early experiences teach you about starting and scaling a company?
Probably the most valuable part was just to be in that community, right? Being surrounded by founders, by investors, just people who are in the startup scene. It was also much smaller back then, but it just felt like kind of my kind of people, right? And just learning from them, even though I was still in my studies and trying to absorb everything and just listen. And yeah, it came very natural to me. Like I never had an issue to kind of find the motivation or the drive or the time to go to those events, spend time there, organize them, help, because I just really enjoyed it.
And what I find very interesting is you have an ETH background and you grew up in this tiny village, like you say. How did you come up with building an insurance company? Because as far as I know, not you, and I think also Fabian, you both don't have a background in insurance, right?
Not at all. And I also would have not thought that I end up in insurance. But also, again, looking back, somehow everything led to it, right? It kind of makes sense because I met Fabian at ETH Zurich. He also studied computer science there. And we spent a lot of time together. We became really good friends. Again, there it was just natural. We had similar interests and it came very natural to us to build stuff together. And we always shared one specific also interest, and that was around health and sports. And we trained for an Ironman together. We built like mobile apps on the health side where you for kind of to track your nutrition, computer vision models to kind of take pictures of your food, machine learning models to track and forecast your blood glucose values with continuous glucose monitors, those CGMs. We worked on projects with the hospitals, on radiology, oncology, which is like, again, that field technology plus healthcare that we were super interested in. And we knew we like working together, spend time together, build things together. We actually also started a podcast in the basement of ETH, the ETH main building. And just because it was fun and we wanted to get the ability to talk to people we wanted to talk to. And we never released, I think, the episodes. But that just all came very natural to us. And then because we spent a lot of time building in the healthcare space, you don't get around insurance companies, right? They're omnipresent there. That's how we slowly kind of, in the short version of the story, but like that's kind of how we got in touch with insurance companies and learned more about that sector. Initially also wanted to build with them or for them, right? Because we also again thought like, okay, we are not going to be the insurance company, right? Like we don't know anything about insurance back then. I think now we learned a lot, but so we wanted to build a product for them. It sounded like a great idea, so they can bundle it and like sell it to their customers, and we just provide the technology. But it turned out to not work out at all, because what we also realized is if you really want to make a difference in that industry, you need to build end to end. You really need to kind of choose a greenfield approach. Also, partnering with insurance companies is difficult in terms of their scale, right? They're huge. They don't move that fast in terms of the mindset. And so we realized that it's much, much easier if we start from scratch. But it sounded also crazy to start an insurance company. But we found then ways with like the MGA model, which we currently are running on. That's like insurance light model, where we can still partner with insurance companies, risk carriers in the back. They act like more like reinsurers, provide us with the capacity, they take care of the regulatory part. Great partnership. But we can still do the work an insurance company does from A to Z, end to end, like from sales to underwriting to onboarding, delivering our technology, the claims management, the whole payment infrastructure. So I think that was necessary, because otherwise we wouldn't be not where we are today if we could not control the whole value chain and build everything from scratch.
I find it so interesting because most of the times when we speak with entrepreneurs, they usually follow the path where they're coming from, and you proved the different way, right? You entered an industry where none of the founders came from, and just by what you explained to me shows me how much you learned about the insurance industry. And I think looking back also at the Yokoi time, I see similarities with our road, because we also had no idea about issuing cards or anything, right? And we went into that space. But maybe for the listeners who don't know Grape yet, and I think everyone has heard of you, or they have maybe not heard of you, because also there is not much media coverage about you guys, especially about your funding rounds. We'll talk about that later. But maybe you can quickly explain to the listeners, what exactly does the company do?
So we are on a mission to transform health at work, at the workplace. And how we want to do that, and you heard like we coming more from the tech plus health background, how we want to do that is by reinventing and transforming how employee benefits insurance companies are working with customers. And we do that by allowing customers, those are especially now mid and large size employers, to move their employee benefits insurance to us. So they get insured with us when it comes to the employee insurance. But what they're getting is also much more than just the insurance policy. They get our whole software suite, that helps them automate all those cases, sick leave cases, from end to end, that helps with the leave management for HR, that helps payroll managers, because especially at that size, like large employers, they have hundreds of thousands sometimes of benefits payments every month that we help them calculate and push back into their payroll system. And also on a third pillar, we help them to reduce absences. So that's also our mission, right? Like, and the business model or the place to start as an employee benefits insurer and building that from scratch just ticks all the boxes, because there you can really work closely. You can partner with those companies who are insured with you, and you also have the same incentives, because currently they're already paying often hundreds of thousands, even millions of premium every year. And if they pay it to us, they get insured with that with Grape instead of another insurer. They get also the insurance coverage, but we also help them achieve these goals, these outcomes. And that's just a great partnership. And if we achieve it and we reduce absences, that's a win-win-win, because the employee wins. Nobody likes to be sick or like off work. We can support the employees in that journey. We can support the employers, not just by reducing the administrative work and putting that on autopilot, but also like its costs for them. It's also more long-term. We can really build them, how we call it, like mental wealth for their workforce, right? More resilience in general, like that they're healthier, more sustainable workforce. But also for us as an insurer and our risk carriers and reinsurers in the background, because that means also we can control the profitability of the portfolio, which is super important in the insurance industry as well.
So what I find very interesting about like what you said and the go-to-market motion that comes with it, and we spoke a lot about the go-to-market motion before we started this podcast. I think when I think of employee insurance, and me with my sales background, I never worked in like HR or like in a back office role. But for me, employee insurance is something that only comes up when there is an issue, right? Usually when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So how do you build trust in that category?
It's crucial to trust. I think that's even probably one that you need to pay more attention to compared to if you're building companies in other areas. Because first of all, it's insurance. Trust is everything in the insurance industry for all the players, no matter where you sit. And especially in our area, I feel, because we are dealing with those cases who are in a very vulnerable place, right? Mm-hmm. It's a tough journey if you're on a sick leave or you have an accident, right? It's a very delicate, it's a sensitive issue, right? So we want to do a good job. We have also responsibility, but also for the employers, right? They are giving all their employees into our hands, right? That we are caring for them, we're protecting them, we're processing these cases. So it's an important topic. They roll it out for their whole workforce, often like thousands of employees. And it's also about a lot of money, right? Like they pay a lot of premium, right? And if things go wrong, it can be expensive. So trust and consistency and reliability is super important. Why we also sometimes have to approach things a bit different maybe than other startups. We need to build that trust. Maybe, as you mentioned before, here and there, we also fly a bit more under the radar. We also maybe don't move that fast and break things, rather want to kind of maybe build a bit slower, but then more for the long term to build the trust and not lose it.
What did it take for you guys to really like scale that business to a point where you are today? Because I assume, right? First, you have this risk barrier. You need the first ones to trust you, to start working with you in order to win more clients. You have these, I assume, massive RFP processes, because I think this is not something that you just go for a dinner with the HR director and then they sign up for a new insurance company. So how did you get into that scaling mode?
I mean, there's different probably ways to answer that, but like maybe also more from a product perspective. I mentioned it before. We're actually combining three things: insurance plus technology plus health. And that means like, in the end, like customers sign an insurance contract, right? That's our business model. That's kind of in what we provide underlying as a product. The technology is our enabler. It's also our differentiator, right? If you would take that away, we would be like other insurers, right? I mean, there's some differences, but like pretty much. That's really where we can add value, why customers come to us. On the third part, what also differentiates us, and that's also where we're coming from, is we're not just doing that for a financial optimization, but with the mission to actually have impact, have outcomes of customers to transform health at the workplace. And we bring these things together. And so when it comes to the product, we also had to build that way. We had to be strategic about it. And we knew, okay, at the beginning, we need to make sure that the insurance processes work, right? Because that's our first also responsibility that someone actually can take out a policy with us, right? Or they often they switch policies to us, and we are able to process claims. We can make the payouts. They're correct. They're reliable, right? Like those claims are being also processed. We focused a lot on that. Took also some patience because, as mentioned before, our heart comes from our background more from the health tech side, right? Like kind of working on healthcare. But we knew, okay, strategically we first need to kind of cover those bases, build that core, that foundation, such that we can like scale then on top of that. Then after that, now we're trying to automate a lot. There's like the technology part is being doubled down on the AI front. And more we are now also investing on the health side, such that we have that foundation. We keep being the insurance companies, reliable A to Z. We also have automation. They already get those outcomes. But now in that very unique position, we can also help them reduce absences.
What are the KPIs that you guys track? Like, what are the success criteria for a customer of yours? Especially when looking at the health criteria, because I think this is what really sets you apart from the competition, right? Because normally you just have this fundamental insurance, and that's all that companies have. But how do you make sure that they're successful? How do you track that success?
For us, one big one is the impact of the product, and that means mainly also just the NPS of the product, right, or the Sean Ellis score. So basically, that customers really get a value from our software, kind of being bundled with the insurance. Because if it wouldn't add value, why would they come to us, or why would they stay with us? Then they can also get insured with other big insurers, right? That out there, the insurance product itself is a commodity, right? There, you can. That's what they usually do today. You can get like 5 quotes from big insurers with a big brand, and you compare price usually because the coverage, the terms, and also what the service they provide on how they process your claims, this is pretty much the same as a commodity. So it's very price driven. And our strategy and also how I think really we can scale and be successful and grow is by differentiating ourselves what we provide on top of the insurance product. Right. And that's the software, that's the technology. And so basically what we also need to measure is that it has impact, that they say, wow, with Grape, I have that added value, right, through the software. It adds value, it automates my day, it gives me more transparency, I have more control of the cases, it's faster, it takes also time off, right, my day. That's important for HR, payroll, but also for the CFO. And I think that's something super important to us, right? That we basically also excite customers with what we've built in the product. And now what we're starting measuring more and more is if we actually can also reduce absences. And that's then also the holy grail, because if you can like reduce absences, it's not just that we help them save time. That's where you can unlock the most costs, right? Where if employees are sick, that's very expensive, direct and indirect costs. But also you can unlock the biggest value, because there you can really build mental wealth, as we call it, like where employees and the whole company get more resilient, they perform better, they stay there more for the long term, they can go through highs and lows and moments of pressure. That's really long term what we want to measure more and build for customers.
So you would say that also with Grape, you're in this employee well-being space as well. You make sure, or your goal is that the employee well-being is at the highest it can be, right?
Yeah.
To make sure that you have less absences.
Yes. Yeah.
And now my question to you, because I think this is a very interesting angle, because what you said before, right? It's commoditized, highly commoditized, right? I think if I was as a company, like if I imagine me being a Swiss company around 1,000 employees, what I would look at is, okay, how much does it cost me? How is the claim handling? I think that is an important part, right? What you say, this is like, you can just compare numbers, right? But how do you reduce absences? Like, how does the software do that?
Yeah. So one big part is to automate the administrative part for the employer, like for example, HR and payroll, but especially also our claims managers, right? Our claims team, such that, especially now in the age of AI, right? Like everything that can be done by the machine or by the system is done by the machine, and the system always were needed with the human in the loop to validate it. But that really unlocks time of these people to care for the people who are on that sick leave journey or who are absent. Because still there are areas, it's about, like I said, like very tough journeys where humans are needed, right? Like an AI chatbot won't be able to help you that much to going through that journey. So we really believe in this era with AI where you can automate all of this, you can flip the concept where today a lot of the stakeholders, either on the employer side with HR or on the claims management side, on the insurer side, 80% of the time or even more is spent on administrative tasks. So bureaucracy. And that's then becoming very transactional, and you're just going to crunching through the paper and the forms, And you don't really have enough time to actually focus on how can you help these people. And I think that's the biggest unlock, to flip that. So basically 80%, 90% of all this administrative work is done by the machine, by AI, by technology. And you can take your time to focus on where the human is really needed. I think that's a big one. Another big one is through our integrations with customers to streamline everything. We also, if you're insured with us, you can connect your HR system, your payroll system, your ERP system to Grape platform. That means like all these cases are flowing through our system. We can also work and submit cases automatically, right? It's on autopilot. You automatically submit a case, which means we see them much, much earlier, and we can get active much, much earlier. And that's something you see also in the statistics, where the earlier you start working with employees who are off work, who are absent, who are on a sick leave, the earlier you can also reintegrate them again. Often what happens today is with legacy insurers is that because you might need to you need to submit the case in a form, you need to fill it out in a PDF, send it via email. It might be submitted after a month or two after that actually happens. So the person is already on a sick leave for 2 months, a month, 2 months. And then the insurer has to process it. And maybe they start contacting them after 60, 90 days. That's already 60, 90 days where someone hasn't been supported. And it's much, the numbers really show that it's much, much more difficult. The probability is much lower that you can reintegrate them again, or it just takes longer. And so being there early makes a big difference, and because we are connected to their systems and through the technology, that we can be there from day one.
I want to go a little bit more into the go-to market, because I mean you told us a lot about the different impacts that the product has, and I think that is the complexity, because you're software, you're on the health side, and you're also an insurance company, right? So And I think that is also reflected in your go-to-market, right? Because you have different angles to pitch it, right? You have the typical insurance product, which is like water, right? Because everyone has the same water that they cook with, basically. But if you combine these three, I assume that there is challenges scaling such an organization. And what I'd be curious to understand at this stage where you guys are now, is it harder for you to win the next big customers? Because I know you have these big RFPs and you have a lot of stakeholders to deal with in these tenders. Or is it to keep the whole experience strong once you have more customers in your system?
I think it's the latter. Because winning the next customer, I think that playbook works, right? What we offer, how we differentiate ourselves. But what we really want to focus now on is somewhat also being more product-led than just sales-led, because we are growing very healthy, but we really want to make sure that we can keep differentiating ourselves. Like that gap between what we offer and what the industry standard incumbents is offering is getting bigger and bigger, that added value. And especially I think it's such a great time, like to double down on the product also with AI and kind of just keep adding value and everything else will come. And so we really try to focus now on building out that foundation, that core with existing customers. I mean, we always have new customers joining, but that's probably, does that answer your question, right? Like,
yeah. What would you say, what is the lifetime of a customer when, like, once they start their journey with Grape? How long do these customers usually stick around?
I mean, I think we don't have enough observation period.
It's 100%.
Yeah. Like, so basically, there are not many customers who could even like that switched or like thought about it or could, because usually we also do like 3-year contracts.
Yeah. So it makes sense. It's also not something you want to deal with every year again, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's common that you're in the insurance industry, go out and you start comparing, because it's very price driven as well, and always see if there's someone else providing a better price, because it's commodity, and then you could switch and save a bit. But I really also feel like if you add that much value and you don't get it anywhere else, like why would you switch? You would lose that value, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's hard to go back from that, right? Because I think as an organization, you always strive to become a better organization. So you would not get rid of these positive things that you have on top, right? Yeah. And just change it to a normal insurance solution. I want to talk a bit more about the team and like your Swiss context. So I know you started as a very small founding team. You said it before, like a team of 2, and you scaled into a larger organization. What about leading a scale up surprised you the most? Like something that you didn't know before?
I think what was for sure eye-opening is that not many people know how to do it or talk about it. So I've been now around the startup scene and the tech scene for a while, and there's a ton of content and a lot of people talk about the early days and what it takes, but not so much about that scale-up phase, going through that journey. And you always need to write your own playbooks, and every company is different. But still, I think that was quite eye-opening, and so you need to learn on the go, right? And everything breaks. Like, I mean, that's something you often hear, but like, it's true. So like, what worked with 20 people doesn't work with 40 anymore, and then with 60 again, you need maybe to rethink it, and with 80 and then 100, and so you need to constantly reinvent. And often, because you're growing fast, it's never an equilibrium. So you're always somewhere behind, right? Like, where maybe the engineering team is growing faster than the product team, or the other way around, and so you need to step in, and it's a lot of work, it's a lot of juggling, a lot of different balls, and I think it's a stormy phase. And probably the most important part is if you have the right team and you focus a lot on hiring the right people, you'll get through that stormy phase, and things then catch up and come together. But it's a lot also organizational. So leading, kind of all of a sudden communication when it comes to meetings, teams are bigger, cross-functional, like how this team works with this one. Yeah, I think that's probably the parts where you feel the growing pain the most. Yeah.
Is there any example you can share with the audience, like where, you know, that was really a pain for you and that you overcame, that you think other entrepreneurs, other founders could learn from?
I think one of the most important one, I'd say, that really unlocks a lot is scaling yourself as a co-founder, because there's so much you can also still get done. I mean, at the same time, so little you can get done, right? Because like I always say, like if you even work on the weekends, right, and you push your time you invest in the business by another 20%, another day, or 40%, at that scale, it's nothing against making the whole organization 5 or 10% more effective, right? If you're 100 people, you make it 10% more effective. That's like 10 FTEs basically. You cannot compensate that with your own time. So that for sure, like you need to switch that mindset, but still you need to be able to scale yourself. That you're at the beginning, you work on a lot of operational stuff. You do a lot yourself, right? And you need to detach yourself from that, because as I said, if you grow, then all of a sudden you just swamped with all of that, and you don't focus on the big ideas, the big topics that move the business forward. So I think that's probably the biggest one. I and Fabian also pay a lot of attention to, like, and for us, not many companies use it, but we have a co-CEO model. I think also it doesn't work for every setup, but for us, it's really a success model. It works very well. Because together it always feels like it's already hard to do the job as a co-founder and CEO. And with two CEOs, I always say it's like we have double the brain cells, and that's helpful sometimes if you coordinate well. And we can like interchange topics between us. If I'm here a bit swamped, he can pick up something on my plate, because he's also like has a technical background and was there from the beginning. He knows the ins and outs and the product and the insurance part. I know a lot about the sales side, the partnership sides. I can jump in there. So I think that's very complementary. But yeah, in short, I think really making sure you as a founder also catching up on what's your next role in this phase, and that you scale yourself. Yeah.
It's a very similar answer that when I look back at like my podcast that I had with Silvan, it was for me the same. I think the whole, like the different stages you go through, and you have to reinvent yourself so many times, and there's new challenges every 6 months. I really resonate with that. I think you mentioned also an important or very interesting setup that you guys have, right? This co-CEO role, which I think in Switzerland is not that common actually. It's more in the States that I see it, or also in Germany I saw some that have it. I'm curious, is it like, do you guys have like a defined role each in that co-CEO model, that you say, okay, you do go to market, Fabian does fundraising, or the other way around, or do you both actually do the same and you just split it up into people?
Now we have a split. We even had that at the beginning where we didn't call ourselves CEOs. We're two co-founders. But and I think it's also super helpful. I would recommend it to everyone. Like, just say, okay, you still, like as co-founders, you do everything, right? Both do sales, both do product, both do everything. But still having a split and say, like, if it comes down to a focus area and certain ownership, like you focus more on the commercial part, I focus more on the product. And so that's defined. And then whenever you need some support and like switch things around, you just coordinate. And we do that till today. Even now as co-CEOs, we have clear defined areas of responsibilities. And it also is more and more important for the team that they, of course, know, like, if I need to involve someone and if I need a decision, I go to this person. We also need to coordinate a lot and also respect that responsibility, because like if I have ideas or inputs, for example, on the sales side, right, I cannot just go to the sales team and tell them like that. Those are my thoughts, because they're like, okay, now I'm confused. Like we have another co-CEO who says that, and like so we need to align a lot. But that works well. But it also only works if I think if you're the people who can make it work, right? Like maybe if your characters were a bit different, right, which can still also work out, where you maybe have a bit more friction, or you also are disagreeing more or differently, how the way you disagree, maybe then it doesn't work. It gets too confusing and too also challenging. But for us, it works really well. We have the responsibility split, and we can jump in and help each other out, give each other ideas, challenge each other. And it makes the job much, much easier. I'm glad I have another co-CEO. If I would need to, as a CEO, do everything, it could work, but I would have less attention for these topics, and it would be a harder job. Yeah.
It's a very interesting approach, and also when I met you guys at the very early days, I never asked that question like, who is the CEO of you two, because I always spoke to both of you, and it seems to work very well for you. And you mentioned about the team, right, and like the communication to your team. So when we had a catch up over coffee just before we started this podcast, we were talking about the early team, like your first hires that you did, and I remember speaking to them myself, and you said I think they're all still with Grape, right?
I think most are, yeah. Like, yeah.
How come that you still have all these talent with you in the company?
We were very careful hiring. We took a lot of time, still until today. I mean, you never have 100% kind of hit ratio. It's also okay. That's just a part of the game and the numbers. And people also come and leave. We have people also leaving, starting their own companies, which is the best reason to leave, right?
100%.
But every time, and it's hard, but every time when we said no, and we already needed the people yesterday, especially if you're growing, right? It was worth it. We always say like, either it's a hell yeah, and otherwise it's a hell no. There's not really anything in between we should accept. And that paid out, but it's painful. It's still, although I have went through a lot of hires and a lot of interviews, still today it's hard. I need to check myself and say, okay, we need this person already. Like, it's critical for the business. We have a gap. We need to fill it. But I don't have to tell yeah. It's painful. I say no. And then 3 months later, somehow we get through it. The team comes together and like kind of fills that gap, even though we haven't hired one. And it's worth it. Then we find that person that's a fit and it's long term. But it's hard. It's not an easy task. But like, yeah, taking time with hiring is, for us, it paid off. It was worth it. Yeah.
And I know two things about Grape when it comes to fundraising and to employee ownership of the company. One is you raised capital. You actually raised very, very well. Like, if you look at the Swiss startup scene, I think you guys did an amazing job.
We're very happy.
But I don't really read much about it. And second, you told me that you actually had your early employees back in the days investing into the company. They invested with their money, became shareholder. Can you walk us a little bit through why don't you communicate these really cool stories of your funding out in the market? And B, what is your experience having your employees also investing in your company?
So on the funding one, we thought about it quite first principle, and we're like, okay, what do we get from announcing a funding round? And it's also a bit special to our case. And if you go through the reasons, it's okay, you get PR, which is true, and it's nice. It can bring you customers. Depends also on the area you are. For example, if you're more into B2C or like B2B, but your customers are startups, or that can help a lot. They read about that. It boosts your brand. Hiring, right? You get an influx of talent. You're on the map. There's a lot of these reasons. In our context, and we touched on it before, right? Like, we were in the trust business, right? And we were a new player. And there are a lot of reasons for the industry to also disregard us and say, okay, like, they're new, they need to prove themselves, and like, what could go wrong? Great product, everything works, but what I read in the newspapers, right, like, people who are not from the startup industry, and it's also true to some extent, the startups come and go, right? They move fast, they break things, and so we try to not associate ourselves too much with being a startup. So we try to stay a bit away from the startup category. We cannot hide it, right? Like, especially at the beginning, like being a small team and just not
where you guys are coming from.
Yeah, exactly, right? But at least maybe not like kind of put it out there or like boost it. And when it comes to funding, it was similar. We're like, okay, maybe let's try it. It was also not like a very clear decision. We're like, let's try it. I think maybe for the funding round, for a seed round, let's not announce it. And on the peer side, I think it worked, right? Like we got the number of candidates. We have very healthy funnels. We got the number of candidates we wanted. We can hire well. Somehow people still know us. We get to the customers, to our broker partners, right? Like we invest there. So I think it still worked out. And yeah, we might keep it that way. Like for us, it seemed just right. And and on the second question you asked, when it comes to the employee ownership, again, just something that felt natural to us, or like felt like something we want to do. Where we were that small team, and everyone believed so much into Grape. And I very much also believe that like the most valuable thing you have is anyway your time. So if you're working for an early stage startup, the time, those years you invest, right, it was so valuable. Opportunity costs, what else you could do. So that's even more valuable than maybe investing more money into a startup. But they were so excited to be a part of Grape that for a lot of them, it was a no-brainer to even say, I mean, Grape will be huge and will be a success no matter what. I actually want to double down, not just with my time and the employee stock options I have. I would love to also invest some of my savings. I think which is the best testament that you have the right people on board. And it's also the greatest thing to see, because now also that we're growing and valuations go up, right? Like, I mean, the people who have been there from the very beginning, having ownership, having a stake in the company, and if ever also it liquefies, having for them that bet to pay off, I mean, just also makes me happy just thinking about it. So I'm glad we did that. Eh?
I think it's so interesting because, also at Yokoi, we sometimes are struggling with employees, to explain to them what is the value of the options that we give to them. And we realized that when, people were discussing about salaries, or they were comparing like offers from different companies, they would always think in their OTE, their on target earning, right? Which is a number, which is a salary, right? And obviously we also had our employees participating through through a stock option plan. But those are options, right? You didn't have to put money on the table for those options, right? And when I listen to you, I think there is a different, like something different happening in your thinking if you put your money into a company, like you really invest, and you also become a shareholder, right? So you also have voting rights. Was that an issue at some point, or did that always work well for you guys? Because you also want to avoid to have someone on your cap table that is not in your interest.
Yeah, it's also a risk, right? I mean, for us, it paid out because or paid off because we maybe also to some extent we were lucky, but like these people, the early ones, right? We had so much trust in them, right? They were so carefully selected that I think that's the relationship, the trust, right? Like we knew, like no matter what, like they're not gonna make troubles, right? Because it is true, if you have them in an employee stock option plan, if you have a bad leaver and so on, right? There are some protections around that. If they're actually invested in a cap table, it can get way more complicated. They are a real shareholder, so it is a bit of a trade-off. So we also don't do that anymore, right? For that, at that scale, we are now like moving to 100 people at the whole company. We're not kind of getting every employee directly on the cap table. But in the early days, it felt right, and so far it worked out well.
It's almost like an extended late founder team that you have there, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
That's really cool. If you look at the future, what do you think will be the next hard chapter, the next nut to crack for Grape?
For us, we really want to also move into being an AI native insurance company. I think that's just a no-brainer move. So we had to approach our whole strategy in layers, right? With the business model, being able to issue policies, then like really automating and building the tech layer for the insurance part end to end. Now coming in with automation, building everything on autopilot, and also with health and reducing absences, Grape Care. But the next chapter is doubling down on a lot of that by end to end. And we are in the perfect position, but end to end, not just building with technology and automation, but really kind of becoming the AI native employee insurance company, which is really also the future. And like that kind of sets us up more. It's very much in line with our strategy to add more value to customers, to differentiate ourselves from the competitors, and and then take all of that and invest it into reducing absences, transforming health at the workplace, building that mental wealth for companies. Yeah.
Cool. I prepared some rapid fire questions for you. I will ask you short questions and you just give me the answer.
Please, yeah.
That comes to your mind first. First one, insurance or software?
Software.
Precision or speed?
Precision.
Platform or carrier?
Platform.
Product instinct or operational discipline?
That's a difficult one. Let's say operational discipline. Yeah.
One skill every first insurtech founder has to learn faster than expected.
Building trust and the relationships. Even though we want to disrupt a lot of the industry, you still need to partner. Partnerships are crucial in industry. Yeah. You need to build that trust in those relationships. Yeah.
Greg, thanks very much for joining the session.
Thanks, Lars.
It was a pleasure.
It was a blast.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.